Hey, gang, it's me, Dr. Steve. With all the successful boycotts we're seeing out there, woke corporations are absolutely freaking out. They're realizing that all the woke systems they've implemented into their businesses, from the DEI initiatives to CRT to ESG, they're not only wildly unpopular among the American population, but they're also just downright illegal and unconstitutional. Just ask the Supreme Court, who just crushed the liberal sacred cow of affirmative action in our nation's universities. All of this woke unraveling is happening at lightning speed, and I'm pleased to be joined by my good friend, Andrew Krabushitz of redballoon.work, the world's largest anti-woke jobs board, to talk more about this. And we're also joined by Chief Creative Officer Brett Craig, who, together with Andrew, they both just put together an amazing viral video ad. We're going to see it about wokeness in the workplace. Brett's worked on other marketing ventures. So I think you may have heard of things such as Matt Walsh's "What is a Woman?" So they're here to talk about some amazing thing that's going on. So Brett, Andrew, welcome, my friends.
Thanks for having us. Always exciting to get to talk to you, Steve.
Oh, it's great chatting with you guys, as always. So we're going to take a look at this ad in a moment. But Andrew, why don't we start with you? Give us a bit of the backstory behind this. What inspired you to produce this ad?
Yeah, well, obviously, we've got lots of employers and job seekers who feel stuck in their jobs. They feel like they don't know where to go. The employers feel like, man, I'm only going to hire people who are going to, have cultural C4 strapped to their chest as they come into my company and try and inflict DEI and CRT on the rest of the employees. And so they're just terrified. They don't know where to go. And obviously, there's employees out there who feel like they're stuck in their job. There's no other options out there. And so we kind of wanted to poke fun at this wokeness in the workplace. And in fact, it's interesting because if you look at what most people will live with themselves, we're conservatives. We just kind of keep our head down, live and let live. We have the highest pain tolerance of anyone. But if you ask us to do the same thing to our children as is being done to us, that's when Mama Bear comes out. That's when we start to fight and realize that we want to build something better for the next generation. And so Brett is a genius. And so I'll give big kudos to him. This is his brainchild to be able to say, look, let's make fun of the fact that if we don't make a stand now, we're going to build a world for the next generation that we're not happy with. And so that's what we were trying to accomplish in the ad. And obviously we wanted people to realize the silliness of the DEI stuff that's happening today.
Yeah, you did that quite well. How about you, Brett? What was your role of inspiration and like in this?
Well, the ad is originally a Monster job board ad from 1999. And it really hit me that we should parody that, because if Monster had done the ad saying, you wouldn't want to be stuck in a sort of a middle management job and having to brown nose the boss and you're just filing your life away and never going anywhere. And I thought, if you remade that today, you would make this ad about the fact that you're being judged on your genetics. Yeah. You're being judged for your skin color, in all these, your political beliefs, which is another big thing. And it's a dystopian workplace at this point that really kind of happened in the last 3 to 4 years. And so if you made that ad today, it really would be a dystopian nightmare. And so I thought, man, wouldn't it be amazing if these kids talked about these issues and would sort of bring that to life, and sort of stark reality of what people are facing in the workplace. And as Andrew said, I think make parents think about the fact that this is what we're handing to our children if we don't begin to speak up.
Yeah. Well, it's brilliant. So without further ado, let's check out this ad from redballoon.work.
When I grow up, I want to work for a woke company, like super woke.
When I grow up,
I want to be hired based on what I look like,
rather than my skills.
I want to be judged
by my political beliefs.
I want to get promoted
based on my chromosomes. When I grow up,
I want to be offended
by my coworkers
and walk around the office
on eggshells
and have my words policed
by HR. Words like
grandfather,
peanut gallery,
long time no see,
no can do.
When I grow up,
I want to be obsessed with emotional safety
and do workplace sensitivity training
all day long. When I grow up, I want to climb the corporate ladder
just by following the crowd.
I want to be a conformist.
I want to weaponize my pronouns. What are pronouns?
It's time to grow up and get back to work. Introducing the #1 woke-free job board in America, redballoon.work.
So, as you could see, that ad was both hilarious and genius, which of course is a wonderful combination. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I see a double entendre there, because you got kids saying what no child in their right mind would ever conceivably wish for. At the same time, we're all noticing that woke activists are more and more blatantly and explicitly coming after our kids. Right. So, I mean, they're openly saying this. So, in other words, kids are now the new battle line for the woke left. So, I think you hit both points there. This is the kind of culture that we're going to create if we're not rising up and giving an alternative culture at that. But also, kids are the perfect spokespeople for this, precisely because they become the new battle lines in this culture war.
Absolutely. And I think what happens generally is the liberals will turn the dial up to 11. Finally, conservatives will wake up. They'll do something about it. The liberals will back off just a little bit. They'll dial it back to 8. They'll wait a couple years and they'll dial it back up to 11. And they're gaining ground every time they're doing this. What's encouraging about this moment is that when you start talking about our kids, I think that's the thing that's going to keep conservatives awake. It's going to make them realize this is not just a voting issue that we need to show up at the polls and then go back to sleep. No, this is a battle. We are in a battle right now for culture. We're in a battle for our children. And a lot of those places, a lot of those battles start in the workplace, because if you can't be free at work, if you feel like you have to self-censor, where you can't be brave, you can't be courageous, you show up to work and you have to pretend you're someone else, your kids are watching that. Right. Don't think that they're not paying attention to that. And so my hope is, because the left is so blatantly trying to come after our kids, that conservatives stay awake. They realize this is a moment that we need to stand up and push back. And we're seeing that. Right. And this is what you talk about all the time, Dr. Steve, is that conservatives are waking up and they're staying awake. They're pushing back. And there is this great movement. I mean, you talked about what the Supreme Court did with DEI not being allowed in the universities. Well, I think there's going to be a constitutional hurricane that's going to sweep away a lot of these DEI policies in the workplace, because if it's not allowed there, it shouldn't be allowed. You shouldn't be able to discriminate in your hiring in the workplace either. So it should be encouraging. We just need people to stay awake.
Yeah. I mean, even Larry Fink of BlackRock is starting to back away from DEI language and the like. And he's saying, the radical, what did he say? The far left and the far right both have misused the term, so I don't like touching it anymore. It is far left by its nature, for heaven's sakes. It's almost bizarre. But Brad, how about you? I mean, again, the kids, the fact that you're using kids as the point of orientation in that ad just seems to be so profound. It's so deep, given the challenges we're facing.
Yeah, I think, like Andrew said, for some reason, I think a lot of adults in the workplace and Fortune 100, Fortune 500 have seen these policies sweep in. Something inside of them is telling them it's not right, but you're outnumbered in a room. You usually have some DEI expert at the front of the room. You feel like if you speak up, you'll be sort of culled off from the herd and taken out.
Yeah, and if I could, in parentheses, there's also a sense too of, this will pass. This is a phase. Right. I just keep my head down for a little bit. In a couple of years, it'll be all forgotten. There's also that hope as well. I think
you're right. I mean, I think when the DEI stuff started, it started with unconscious bias training. And and what I say to people all the time is, inside of DEI, it's neo-Marxist, if you really understand its origins. But inside of the ideology, there's always a kernel of truth. There is some things they're talking about. It would be good if we had diversity of thought. And that will often represent itself different skin colors and different types of people. It would be good if we welcome everybody to the table. This is inclusion, right? It would be good to try to be fair. So there is something good about it. On its surface, on the wrapping is nice, but then it goes further. And then, within a year or two of when it got introduced in 2020, we're now I mean, this term whiteness and white this, white that, and you start to go, okay, this thing's gone off the rails from whatever it was supposed to be in the beginning. And it just seems like it's just anti people, and it's non-inclusive.
Yeah.
It's actually exclusive. But I think to Andrew's point about the kids, you know, I do think adults are sitting there and they hear some of it has a kernel of truth in it. Therefore, I'm kind of like a deer in the headlights. I don't know what to say as this DEI guru is telling me this. And so I don't know how to speak up for myself. But when I start thinking about the world we're creating for our kids, I suddenly get a little bit more likely to get off the sidelines and actually get in the fight. And I do think that is what maybe is beginning to happen as we see the thing continue to go off the rails even further.
Yeah, your observation there actually has been made by John Cleese, of Monty Python, who's a huge critic of woke political correctness, especially of how toxic it is to humor, which you guys did a wonderful job with in terms of the genius of humor, and how it's a wonderful social critique, going all the way back to Athens, ancient Athens, of course. But I think he said something akin to, political correctness was this idea, just this very frankly good idea of being tolerant of other people and other ideas. We've been talking about this for 3 centuries, for heaven's sakes. That's nevertheless gotten hijacked by the most neurotic, vicious people on the planet. How did Elon Musk said, they hide behind a veneer of virtue, all the while inflicting horrific, vicious racism and just vile, their own forms of sexism, their own forms of vile exclusionisms and the like. We talk about consumer politics all the time here, boycotts and boycotts, and people refusing to buy from companies that offend their values, and then deliberately buying from companies that support and defend those values. But it seems, Andrew, you've taken this to another level. It's not just that people are tired of buying from woke corporations. People are more and more tired of working for woke corporations. So the boycott seems to be moving into the sphere of career and job choice. Are you seeing people intentionally leaving leftist work environments?
Oh, absolutely. Because I think you kind of wake up and realize that if they are paying me a salary, whatever that salary is, if it's 100,000, if it's 300,000, they are making, the company I'm working for is making more money than they're paying me. And of course they are. They have to be, or else they shouldn't be employing you. So don't think you're plundering the Egyptians. They are using your labor to push their ends. I remember I was talking to a CEO of a video game company in Atlanta, and he tweeted something in support of the heartbeat law in Texas, and was fired within 24 hours. And Brett and I, we all have our cancellation stories, inclusive and all that.
Of course, right. Yeah.
Right. So he got fired, and it was kind of like, man, we're losing our powerful people in high places. And like, no. You are using your labor to make an enormous amount of money for a company that clearly hated life, for a board that clearly hated life. And so you're being redeployed. And so we're trying to help conservatives understand that you've got your first votes at the polls. Your second vote's how you spend your dollars. And your third vote is where you spend your labor, because your labor, conservatives are the hardest working, most conscientious people, which are the best employees, right? Yeah. And so if you are spending your labor on a company that hates death or hates life, that is pushing a woke agenda, be aware they're using your labor to push against your worldview. They hate your worldview. So it's time to stand up, push back, and obviously come over to redballoon.work. We'll help you find a new job, because there is a growing movement. People are tired of being pushed around at work. And you'd be surprised when you're free at work, when you work for a company that's like-minded, you will be able to be free at home. We get notes from people all the time saying they're more plugged into their church, to their community, their family's in better shape. It's just really important.
Yeah, that's right. So if the freedom element of your career is intact, the faith and the family element are beneficiaries as well. Yeah. So are you guys hopeful about the next decade in this regard? Do you sense that the tides are turning here?
I'll leave that with Brett.
I go through ups and downs. I guess I feel like I can't worry about the outcomes. I know what the right thing to do is.
There you go.
And I don't know if that's even just like a comes back to even my Christian beliefs. Like I leave the outcomes to God. He calls me to get in the fight. I don't think we can disengage the culture. I think that, for the longest time in America, I think conservatives, Christians thought we could sort of exit the battlefield. And what we found is when we were out on the sidelines, the entire game has been taken. We have no ground left. And so I feel like I've been called to re-engage and be on that field and represent. And then I have to leave the outcomes to him. And so I wake up every day and I feel purpose. And I don't know if I'd trade that for anything. It's not like it's easy. And I'm sure Andrew would say the same thing. It's not like it's not like we have all the corporate dollars and we have, the massive bank accounts that are attached to the left seems to have all of that, the billions of dollars. But what we have is a righteous cause. I mean, we believe that people ought to be judged by their character. I stand on that. I'm not going to move from that. And I think we believe we're creating a better world for our kids by taking this risk. And so I have an energy and an enthusiasm for what we're doing, and outcomes, I'll leave that to God.
Yeah, I love that, Brett. And I would give a plug to, and I'm Steve, I'm an eternal optimist. I love the direction we're going. I'm seeing little pieces of this freedom economy bubbling up all over the place. And the fact that, Brett basically, here's my plug for Brett and Big Agency and Big Studios, is if you want a world-class commercial made, they are the best. And the reality is that Brett used to work on Super Bowl commercials for Taco Bell, for Dr. Pepper, for the biggest brands. And the fact that I get to work with someone of that quality, because we both have our cancellation story, is amazing. And that should be encouraging to people. They're intelligent, hardworking people who are waking up and saying, you know what, I'm going to opt out of this woke system and I'm going to help build this parallel economy that you talk about all the time. And so, it's going to start in bits and pieces like leaven through the loaf. It's not going to happen all in 1 minute, but it's going the right direction. And the fact that the three of us are talking, and we might not have if the woke people hadn't gotten so crazy, is a real blessing. And so I'm optimistic. I think we're going the right direction, and good people are doing good things. And Big Agency is one of them.
Yeah, now can I add one thing to that too, which is to Andrew's point, more coming every day. I got a call the other day from one of the best designers I've ever seen in my life, at one of the biggest, agencies in the world. And I mean, his work is unbelievable. He's like, I'd like to start doing stuff with you, because he wants to be a part of that. Jennifer Say, the former executive at Levi's, I'm about to drop a commercial tomorrow for Icons, which is the Independent Council on Women's Sports, which defends women's right to have sports against other women and not have men that identify as women in their sports. We're dropping that ad tomorrow. And to Andrew's point, thank you for the compliments, Andrew. I think it's a beautiful ad. So we're just seeing more and more talent come over. People like Jennifer Say are, Andrew and I can sit in a room with her. She might call herself a progressive, but we all agree that we, and these basic American principles. And I think that's exciting to see that starting to happen.
And we saw this historically, in the 60s and 70s, particularly in Czechoslovakia back then, with the original parallel police, the parallel economy that they were arguing for, Václav Havel. And what was so interesting is that as the Eastern Bloc got more ideologically pure, and also there was nepotism in there and all kinds of weird stuff, they started experiencing a brain drain. And so all the great minds actually started going over to the dissident side. And that's one of the ways that over a period of 2 decades or so, they started devising ways of creating an alternative society, sort of an underground society that ended up becoming the mainstream society after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Václav Havel ended up becoming president of, then Czechoslovakia and then the split, the Czech Republic. So, yeah, so we've seen this before. It's inevitable. I think Victor Davis Hanson was saying that the more they push this ideological purity / absurdity, the more they push that, the more they end up having to inevitably excommunicate competence from their ranks. And
I would add one thing to that too, is Andrew and I just did something creative, and as creative people, we have to be able to go explore out on the edges of ideas and push and prod and ask questions. And this is woke ideology basically shuts the conversation down. We can't ask a question. We can't sit in a room and kind of poke at the truth or find out what's out of bounds. Where would we not want to go for Red Balloon? And where is just the right place to be for this brand? We have to ask questions. In doing that, we have to say things. And when we say things, I could offend somebody, or Andrew might offend me. And if we're going to live like that, we can't get to anything good. We've got to be able to debate. We've got to be able to talk. And that's how we're able to make an ad like we did for Red Balloon, where we actually had a lot of fun because we challenge each other and make the idea better. I mean, Andrew fed into that ad. He like, what if we said this? And the next thing you know, that finds itself in the ad. And that's the creative process. And we have to have an open process like that to do great work.
And that's where humor comes in as well. I mean, humor is able to explore and to critique in ways that, of course, the woke will shut down because it's too offensive and the like. Andrew, tell us exactly how patriots can use redballoon.work to find non-woke work as well as non-woke employees.
Yeah, it's really straightforward. You go to redballoon.work. It's not .com because that sounded too much like communism to me. We want to work. We don't want communism. So it's .work, redballoon.work. You can sign up for a free job seeker profile. You can download the Employee Bill of Rights, which is written by a 20-year labor lawyer that tells you what your rights are and the workplace, so that you know where you can push back and where you have legal backing to push back. And you can set up a profile. Employers can reach out to you. And there's a ton of other resources there as well. Look, if you're an employer and you know that a bad hire is going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars, which it will, but if you ask the wrong questions in the interview process, you might get yourself a lawsuit. If you're kind of afraid of the hiring process, this is where redballoon.work can come in. We have the world's largest database of job seekers who believe that America is a great country. Capitalism is good. Christian conservative values are what made this country great in the first place. And you can do everything from post your jobs to make sure you're in front of all those people, or we can actually run the hiring process for you. So if you'd like us to do a cultural interview to make sure that the next great hire that you have, by the time you talk to them, you know that they have the right skill set and they have the right worldview that's going to focus on productivity, that's going to focus on meritocracy, and that's just going to focus on joy of the hardworking day. Red Balloon can actually take on that whole hiring process for you and make sure that you're staffed with awesome patriots who are going to make your business grow and make you more money. So that's how we work with employers, and it's so much fun. And I'm talking to dozens of employers literally every single week who are finding that there are great patriots who want to work for them, and they can grow their business because they have great people. It's really fun.
It's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Gang, be sure to click on that link in the description below. Visit redballoon.work for all of your non-woke job business needs today. They're on the front lines of building the parallel economy. Heck, really building a parallel civilization of faith, family, and freedom. And they're here to serve you in precisely that capacity. So click on that link, avail yourself of their wonderful resources, and share their amazing commercial with friends and family. They're going to absolutely love it. Let's make it go even more viral than it already has. Andrew, Brett, thanks guys so much for all you do. Keep up the amazing work.
Thanks so much
for having us. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.